Good evening, everyone. So we are going to start a demo on RHCE part, and that's a portion where you have the knowledge of Red Hat Administration 1, RHCS 1, and now you are going to proceed for RHCE, which is Red Hat Certified Engineer. Talking about me, I have a 5 years of experience in the Linux field as well. I have done my RHCE and also I'm AWS certified. I have done certification in Ansible. So being administrator, I have exposure to the real life troubleshooting where I deal with day to day tasks on a real time scenarios. I have given training to the corporate office employees or to the students who wanted to move into the IT field or the IT employees who wanted to change the field. So as I have the exposure to the real life troubleshooting, will use that particular experience of mine while we going through the training. So the scope of the demo is RHCE, where we'll go through the history of Linux, introduction of Linux, also the main major important part Linux file systems, and a few commands on the Linux. So talking about the history, so how come Linux operating system derived? So basically, Dennis Richardson and Ken Thompson, they both worked together in 1960s and they developed an Unix OS. Initially, it was named as a GNU and Linux, and also that was developed by the Richard Stallman. But when Linus Torvald, who was a student at the University of Helsinki in 1991, he was working on a project and then he created a Linux kernel. And when he created a Linux kernel, from then and there, the name Linux was initially called as a GNU, then it called as a Linux. So Linux is an open source and belongs to the open source family, and there are multiple Linux resources or distributions or distros available in the market which are open source. For example, we have Debian, Fedora, Red Hat, Ubuntu, Xubuntu, Kali Linux. There are multiple SUSE as well. So there are multiple open source available in the market. So now coming back to the that was the history of Linux, how it derived, who created the Linux, and now that's the important part. What's the Linux? Why do we need to learn it? So if you see, Linux has multiple pros. If you see many of the corporates as of now, their servers are running on the Linux servers. They are Linux servers. For example, Facebook, Google, Adobe, IBM. Take one name and you will see every server is running on the Linux operating systems. Why so? Because Linux is a lightweight and even an open source operating system and also a secure one, so that's why it's more preferable over Windows due to its security concerns. So as Linux, for the Linux, you should know and you should have a expertise or hands-on on the CLI, command line interface. In Linux we call it as a terminal. So terminal is an environment which allows you to provide your input and gives the output in a text based, which we called a shell. And this is the main part. What is shell? Like how do we interact with the shell, and what is the advantages? So basically shell is that program which let you interact with the operating systems. So when you execute a command, then it will interpret the command and accordingly perform the task for you. Backend, it interacts with the kernel and kernel interacts with the operating system, the hardware, everything like you are going to put in, and it calls that program and will give you a result for you. So we have multiple shell: sh, ksh, cone shell, bash, born again shell. So as of now, bash is the widely used shell available in the market, so we are using the bash shell. Basically, coming back to the part, we have gone through the terminal and shell where we interact with the operating system. And if I talk about the Linux, on what grounds Linux works, on what basis Linux is made up of. So basically, Linux is organized into the files, and those files are into the organized into the directories. So Linux is having a tree-like structure called the Linux file system. This is the main, the backbone of the Linux file systems. It starts from the slash, and which we call it root, and under root we have multiple directories like tree-like structure. So I'm going through more of it, but this time I'm going to the terminal where I will show you the few commands, how Linux works, or how the file system looks like. So this is the architecture of no Linux. So you see a shell in there, you see multiple shell, ksh, bash, pg, wi, and you will see the shell interacts with the kernel and the kernel interacts with the hardware. And above the shell you will have the multiple application programs like mail server, apache server, dbms, ftp. So coming back to the introduction to the Linux and history, we'll go through the file system, and also we'll go through a few commands in the Linux. So I'm going to share another screen. So we'll see now we have a terminal, and so basically when I said Linux totally based on the like they have the tree-like structure. So if you see, this is the command I'm going to fire. This is cd. That's means change directory. I'm going to do slash. So slash starts the Linux tree-like structure. So if I list all the directories in the star slash, so we'll see here these are the Linux tree like structure. So you will see under slash, I'm going to do pwd and then ls. You will see these are the file structure, the tree like file structure like etc, home directory, media, mnt, root, proc, opt, where. So these are the directories. Every directory has its own importance in Linux file system. So first, etc. This directory contains all the configuration file of the Linux systems. So let's suppose if I install any particular daemon, any particular services, for example, I am going to install a HTTP server. So that particular configuration file of that particular service, it will store into the etc directory, or a few more information regarding the system users. So if I would like to know how many users are there in the system available, so I'm going to check the passability file. So it will give you the information about the users over the system. So basically, and this is about etc contains the configuration files. Let's go to the etc. I'm going to show how it looks like. So these are the no the configuration files of the etc. You will see the cron d and also the package network manager. There are multiple things available. I say fstab. Fstab is the most important part of the Linux operating system. So these are the configuration files. Also, if I talk about other files, other directories, home. So basically, home is the, I'm going to again. So I was talking about home. So home is the directory where when a new user created on the server. So basically, its own directory will be creating under the home directory. Basically, it's a home of other users, not of the root. Root has a different directory. It's root. So what is root? Basically, root, for example, root is the owner of the house. Root is the super user who has all the privileges, and we sometime it call we call it a pseudo users. Pseudo users means the user having all the permissions and can manage every services, which is root user. So we have other directories like tmp directory. In tmp directory we have temporary files. In var directory we have variable files or the logs. So any service is running on the server. So if you want to look at a log file, so you will go to the slash var log messages, or the secure logs. Or in boot files, in boot directory we have the boot files of the server. In mnt, let's suppose you are going to attach a new usb to the server, or you're going to add a new any sort of a virtual disk, so you can mount it here. In proc you will see the processors and the number of cpus, so it will list you out all the information for you. So this is the main file system of the Linux server. So that's we call it a Linux file system, or the tree like structure. So now we have other topic called a few commands basically. So I'm not going through deep much because it's a demo. I'm going to go give you the overview how it looks like, and once we'll start a real session, then I'll be more dig deep into each and every directories. I will give you more insights so that you will be having more information, because it is the one that you need to take care of while training your training period. So if you have the basic strong, then like you can easily crack your interview, or you can promote easily, or you can change your domain as well. So yeah. So now we have few commands. I'm going to now take example of few commands. So being a Linux administrator, you need to have a grasp of every basic commands on the Linux. You should know about, for example, a simple command called ls. Ls means to list something. So I'm going to relate this one to the Windows. So let's suppose you have a Windows, then to see a content in the directory, we do, we double click it, right? Because this is the GUI. So here the similar action we take it via ls command. So in Windows we double click it and we'll see the content, but in Linux we do the ls. So ls means list something out. Basically, there is one more command called cd. Cd stands for change directory, and and you should know the path where you would like to go. So, and one more thing before explaining the cd command, I am going to run the pwd command. Pwd stands for present working directory. So it will let you know in which directory you are in as of now, on the current. So as of now you are in slash directory, and in slash you will list it out, and in slash you will see the etc home or other directories. So if you know the path, then you can, if I say just go to the slash mnt slash etc directory, then cd, and slash, and slash is under etc, then etc, you will be under etc. So we have changed the directory. So one more thing, this is a shell that I have earlier explained to you. So I'm interacting into the shell. I'm I'm giving the inputs and it's giving me the output here. So I'm interacting with shell like ls pwd. I have executed cd. So it's taking the input and giving me the output. You will see a few more information. This string. What is this string? So this is the shell prompt. We call it as a shell prompt. Shell prompt gives us the few information, important information. This is, it gives you about the username who is logged in, and the host name of the div server, also the location. For example, here, so here you will see who is logged into the server. Root, it has three different part here in the shell prompt. So you will see the root, also at the rate, this is the my host name, and this is where I am, right? It's in etc. So you will see pwd etc. If I go to the slash, you will see the shell prompt will change. So now, previously I was in etc, and now I'm in slash. So these are the information it gives the shell prompt. Also, as I say, as I said earlier, root is the super user. So there is a one more thing, how can we check if the user is the super user? So let's suppose shell prompt give you the other information, for example, hash. So if an hash is there, so that means a super user is logged into the server. So these four information shell prompt will give you. First, the username who is logged in, the host name of the server, and the location, the currently the work directory, and also with the symbol hash. If it's not a super user, not a no, it would be a no. If it's a normal user, then the hash will be not there. It would be as a dollar. So this is the main part. It's a catchy part. Now we talked about a cd. So we have a multiple. Basically, if we start the Linux, we should know how to travel in the OS part. You should know the path first, then you will go to that particular directory or particular location. So this is the most basic part, is about the path. And after a path, you will be more comfortable experiencing the CLI level, the command line interface. So there are two paths in the Linux. One is absolute path, one is relative path. What is absolute path? Absolute path is the full path of the directory of the location where you want to go in. And relative path is the same, but it's related to the absolute path. For example, like as of now, it will be confusing for you. but I'm going to give you an example, then you will relate it to it. So for example, I know these, for example, I'm going to into home directory. So I see a directory called this one. I'm going to slash home. This one. Okay. So now when I'm going to do PWD, you will see the current location is this one, because I know I knew the absolute path. That's why I went in to this location. So let's suppose if I am in PWD, now I know when I executed this command, so this was a absolute path. So this was a absolute path because I knew the path. I have given complete path slash home and the directory I want to go in. Now I'm in home directory. So now I need to go to this directory. So I'm not going to give the full path, absolute path. I'm going to give a relative path, cd, and that's it. Because I knew I was in slash home. But if you are in slash and you then you do this directory, you won't find it, because in slash you will find only this directory, and this directory is under home. So that's the main difference between absolute path and the relative path. Absolute path, you know the full path and go you can go to that path. But if you are in a particular, let's suppose you are in slash home one, and you can use the relative path because you know there is a one directory. So that's the main difference between absolute path and relative path. And now coming back to the few Linux commands. So basically the commands are the ones which gives you the functionality. Let's suppose SLL ls, it will list you out, or cd, it will change the directory for you, and cp is the one, like in Windows we just control c and control v, but here you need to specify cp space destination space the source and space the destination. For example, there is a command called touch and touch test. So there is a command called touch which will create a file, a simple file, empty file. Okay, I have created a file test under slash root. I have executed pwd, and now I'm going to copy that test file to the slash tmp. So cp source and destination. I know tmp file tmp directory exists under slash, so slash tmp. So if I go to slash tmp, I will see the test file here. All right. So that's, we have gone through cd change directory, and also a cp file cp. Basically these are the commands, but these commands comes with the options as well. The options, they comes within, they increase the commands functionality. For example, if I do only ls, then it will list the content under the etc directory. But if I mention ls space hyphen l, then it will long list the directory like this, long list the directories. So that's mean ls I executed ls, but I have mentioned hyphen l with the same, so that's been its functionality was increased via hyphen l, and it's giving me a long listing. For example, what is giving me, it's giving me the permissions of that particular directory, and the ownership, and when it was created, and what's the size. So these are the other information I got it right with the hyphen l. So as you know, the hidden files are the files which are starting from dot, are hidden in the Linux OS. For example, I'm going to create a file called touch.b, right? I'm going to ls, but it won't, like, I cannot see it. So we have a functionality called hyphen a, then it will give you the hidden files as well. So it just I wanted to make you know aware, like we have multiple options. Like with the CP we have CP-A, CP-P to preserve the permissions, and we have LSBLK command. LSBLK command gives you the what are v disks, what are the devices attached to the other disk attached to the system. As of now none is there. So also we have a move command, mv command, same, it works like the same as CP works. You just mentioned the source and destination. Also it uses as to rename the file content or the file name. So these are the information, these are the basic commands that we have gone through. There are multiple commands that will go through when we are going through the course, the complete course. It's just a demo, so I'm just giving you an overview here. And coming back to our slide, let me just show it here. So these are our architecture, and also what will going through throughout the course. We'll go through more deep into the introduction of Linux. There are multiple things in the file system structure directory. We'll go through the permissions. We'll go through the partition, LVM, user management. We'll go through the security of Linux, remote administration, SSH, WinSCP, SSH, SCP, process management. We'll go to the mail server, Apache server. There are multiple lot of things that a particular Red Hat certified engineer does in a company will go through. Also with the real-time troubleshooting scenarios. Add-on topics, I would like to add a few topics like SC Linux and inodes. These are the most important topics will come across. So yeah, we'll go through this one as well. And project, yeah, after completing the course it would be good to have a hands on it. As I am working currently in a company with the Linux administration role, so I know the real time scenarios, real time troubleshooting. So definitely it would be very helpful. After completing this course, we'll create a web server and we'll host a site on it. We'll host different multiple sites. So also there is one more project we'll go through with the Samba server as well, like how Samba actually works in real time scenario. We'll transfer a file from Linux to Windows. We'll create a Samba share over there. A lab setup, it's a minimal requirement. So 64-bit processor to 2 GB RAM and 4 GB drive is more than enough for to have lab setup and to continue with your testing. Also additional course resources, definitely after each and important topic it would be good if you have the questionnaire, what so that you can keep a tab on the part that you have missed. So it would be very useful for you. So I'll be providing you the additional questionnaire after each important topic, and also the web link and any PDF related to the main topic that you can refer later on will be provided to you as well. Mock interview, this is the most and the main part after the course completion, and where you will be evaluating on the basis of the course that you have gone through, that you have completed. Basically it will be, so I'll be setting up a real time interviews where you will be questioning about the Red Hat Linux, about real time scenarios, about tricky questions. So it will give you more insights, and it will help you to prepare well for it. Certifications, yeah, after completing this course you can proceed for Red Hat certified engineer. If you haven't done RHCSA, because RHCSA is the must before doing RHCE, so definitely it's going to help you to move ahead in your IT career. Also will also provide you the certificate of achievement with the course that you have completed with us, and it's definitely going to give you additional points in the interviews. So thank you so much for attending the demo session for RHCE. So in the real time, the real session will go through much deeper about each and every topic. So looking forward for it. Thank you guys.